So my name is Mike Jortberg. I live in Chicago. I'm with Slalom, been here 8 years, was prior Salesforce and Model Metrics, and was a Salesforce customer partner employee. I'm also a board member of the Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship. If you're interested in volunteering and getting involved in mentoring kids, building their business plans, you can scan that QR code. Alan, why don't you take it away, introduce yourself, and then we'll get rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Thanks, Mark, for putting together such an awesome event. Alan Mann, I'm here out of Houston, out here in the Deep South. I've been with Slalom for about 7 years, been in the Salesforce ecosystem for a little more than a decade, and an engineer for even longer than that. I hold system and application architect certifications with Salesforce. Been part of conversational AI on the Salesforce platform for about 5 years. Coming in from a dedicated conversational AI team, building Einstein bots and building digital service implementations for a number of industries across Slalom's portfolio.
Our chatbot team basically was end of life when GPT came out. We've been building chatbots for Shiseido and Marriott and Virgin Voyages and other, high-end brands, companies using the Salesforce platform and Einstein bots. But what we realized was that this was a landmark change in technology, and no one's going to hire this team anymore to build old tech. And so we went live with our first customer in September, Virgin Voyages. We'll take you through that scenario. It's all focused on Gen AI and customer self-service, customer service, knowledge generation, summarization, things like that. And we'll show you what that all looks like. We've put together a framework to integrate Salesforce to pick your LLM, pick your vector database, point your summarization engine capabilities at different things, also run categorization and translation and knowledge generation, as well as other systems. We are a system integrator, and so nobody comes to us with 100% Salesforce stack. They come to us with Google and AWS and Facebook and NVIDIA and all sorts of different tools, and Coveo and SharePoint and dozens of combinations. We focused immediately in customer self-service, and like I said, our first customer is Virgin Voyages, Richard Branson company, out of cruise ship out of Miami. You can go to their website today and you can see a couple of different things. One is there's an article, there's a whole story about Slalom and Virgin Voyages on our website. You can also go to Virgin Voyages Virgin Voyages contact us, play around with the chatbot, and feel free to do that as well. The customer also spoke at a public event and talked about the call translations. The other fun thing out there is JLo. You can Google Gen AI with a J and see the video that Virgin Voyages did with JLo to help promote the use of Gen AI in their world. And there's also a YouTube video describing this in more detail. And what we've done is we've connected it also to a Soul Machines solution, which we'll show you what that looks like here in a minute. And so those are some of the moving parts as part of all of this. And so what we'll do is we'll walk through basically what we've seen and experienced as this evolution of world class. If you're from the US, there's this vendor, AAA, they're still in business. They do a huge insurance company. American Automobile Association in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. They used to mail, if you were a member, you would tell them where you're going and tell them where you're going from, and they would mail you a map, and somebody would highlight the route where you would drive. And so if you were a kid, you used to sit in the back of the car and flip the pages every 200 miles. Well, that obviously changed. No one does that anymore because the change in mapping technology completely destroyed the entire paper mapping industry. And we're seeing the same thing happen in customer self-service. So we're going to walk through a scenario of what does an online consumer look like? What does that customer service agent look like? And then what does prompt authoring look like in the Salesforce platform? All of this was built over the last year. Use a services project accelerator. This is not a product. This is a set of solutions that we bring to customers to facilitate the launch of generative AI solutions inside customer service. So with that, we're going to pick on a concert venue called Lollapalooza. I'm from Chicago. One of the things that you'll notice is most help sites, when do the gates open? And when you search that, you get a list of links. And you get a pretty good one here, but that also tells me about parking and Cabana welcome guide and VIP, and I have to click into the article to then read that. So that's interesting. Who's on stage on Saturday? Now this is a date specific, and here's a good example. Who's on stage on Saturday? It's like, it's a bunch of links again, but it doesn't even answer the question. So sadly, this is world class, and you'll see this in almost every customer website. And obviously, when you go to a chatbot environment, let me move these over, and we're going to go show you a couple of variations. And I'm sure you've seen this type of behavior in the past. How much are 3-day passes? Right. The common issue is ask a question and get an answer, right? As opposed to ask a question and get links. So the entire world of customer self-service, this is just one example of that, is going to be changing, because who wants links? I want answers. And so that is going to compress time. And what we've seen is a fundamental drop in inbound customer service. The first Einstein bot we did with Virgin was about a 22% call deflection. When we enhanced it with Gen AI and the Salesforce Knowledge articles and language processing, we got an additional 20% call deflection to the point where when a hurricane came through and they had to cancel a cruise, there was no FAQ about the cancellation in the hurricane. They posted the FAQ in Salesforce Knowledge, made it available to the bot, and it handled 1,200 simultaneous conversations. And so that's a pretty powerful capability. The other thing that happens in Gen AI solutioning that we're doing is it's not just applicable to customer-facing bots. So for example, we have Mark Musician, and I have summarized the case that exists under Mark, the musician at the concert, because I may be providing band support. And so these bots and this language processing engine can be pointed at specific audiences for specific use cases. So for example, if I went over here and say, who is the mayor of Chicago, right? If you ask Google that or GPT that, it's going to answer. In this case, it's saying Lori Lightfoot, because she's part of that. Who won the last election, right? It's not going to know. It's like, I don't have that information. I'm not allowed to talk about that. And so that's an important component of creating guardrails and letting it talk about things it shouldn't, or preventing it from talking about things it shouldn't talk about. In this case, we've shown summarization. So I can very rapidly see what's going on with this audio distortion case. It reduces the amount of time it takes to transfer a case or to escalate a case or to hand it off to another person. Now, the other thing that we're doing with customers is, let me go back and bring up that bot. And let's go bring up the bot here, and we're going to go do a transfer to agent. And many of you may have seen this if you're using Einstein transfers or Einstein bots. How do I report a lost item? If you have any kids who went to Lollapalooza, they lose cell phones all the time. And so here's my transfer to human. And what will happen now is I'm going to bounce out of customer care, and I'm going to go over to transfer to a contact center agent. And what you'll see is an inbound call, an inbound chat. And you can see a couple of things here. One is I've now received that chat. I have gotten a summary of how to, the issue is asked, the keywords, as well as the sentiment prediction. And then I can say, hi, how can I help? And you can see my bot is now going back and forth. I lost a phone at the concert. What should I do? Now, again, Lollapalooza is not a customer. We're just using their site. But what you can see here is it's given me a suggested answer, right? And I'm a human in the loop, and so I can edit that answer. Now, the other thing that can happen is we have the ability to, or LLMs have the ability to speak tons and tons and tons of different languages. Spanish is an easy one. Let's go with German, and you will see the language bot will do a couple of things pretty quickly. One is it gets the question, translates to English, goes into Salesforce Knowledge, generates the answer, brings it back, translates it to German, lets me read it if I need to, make changes to it and things like that. If I like that answer, I can go ahead and hit send and I can answer that. And so what we're seeing is customers want to use these types of translations to provide service for many, many, many more customers.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about kind of what's at the heart of the accelerator that we've built out here. Mike has taken you through a number of examples that demonstrate how flexible our clients are asking for this type of next generation AI tech to be involved in their enterprise. You saw things like function-specific translation bots and conversation summary bots, even public-facing Q&A bots. All of those types of prompts and the orchestration layer to provide that kind of output in generative AI is coming from an orchestration stack that we've built right here native on the platform. So this is kind of the starting point for a generative AI kind of language workbench. We've built this out in a way to make it very simple for a user to get started. I'm going to start by just creating a brand new chatbot. The company that I'm helping build out a new series of tools here is a baking supply goods company that we've made up called Baker's Delight. To all of our Solomonites out there watching this, Baker's Delight is making a comeback in this video. So we're going to start creating a Baker's Delight enhancement with Gen AI. A key part of our framework and the way that we've been building this out, again, coming back down to this notion of flexibility and an agnostic outlook to who's going to win the generative AI race. Right now, we know GPT-4 and OpenAI's suite of products are pretty far ahead of the pack, but we want to ensure that we've got a framework in place for you to experiment with LLMs as they come out. Let your teams experiment with different use cases and scenarios. So you just a little drop down here, pick the LLM that we want to use and give it a basic description, right? In natural language, what do you kind of want the purpose of your new function specific bot to be? You're going to be an FAQ chatbot for a baking goods supply company called Baker's Delight. So this is going to be one of the first, this is going to be used as input to one of the first function-specific bots we built into the framework. Bots helping you build bots, basically. We give it a simple description of purpose, and using some templates that we found work really well for certain LLMs, it'll generate some new system instruction for us. We've also wanted to drastically simplify incorporating RAG patterns into these types of bots as well. So it's just as simple as enabling a checkbox for us to turn on a vector database like Pinecone. Thinking back to LLM agnostic, we're also thinking about our accelerator as a data agnostic platform as well, right? A number of endpoints could be configured, a number of data sources could be configured for grounding in your function specific bots that you're working on. We're going to use Pinecone. I've actually already got a vector database stood up with some pretty useful information about Baker's Delight. We've got a namespace out there called the Baker's Delight AI Enhanced. We hit next. So in just a few seconds, we've got a new chatbot built, capable of communicating with the 3.5 turbo model. We can see a pretty simple zero-shot attempt at creating a new system instruction. We can also adjust some of the hyperparameters as well. I'm a little bit more of an advanced move in prompt engineering, but let's say we want to bring this bot's abilities to be creative down a little bit. We want it to be a little bit more deterministic. We want to keep max output tokens to about 1,000, and we're going to keep pretty low in the context window. We only want about 5 or so results retrieved from Pinecone at a time. So go ahead and save that information. And I want to bring your attention over to Salesforce Knowledge for a second. That Pinecone namespace that we just connected our bot to is connected to about 30 or so articles, a pretty small but mighty knowledge base for our Baker's Delight bot. So it's got some basic information about support operations, stores, what kind of products we offer, things like that. And we can start experimenting with this bot right away. What kind of products do you sell? Start seeing some generations right away that it understands its purpose and knows that it can only talk about information about Baker's Delight. Let's see, tell me about, can y'all support orders in bulk? One of the other kind of key aspects of building out an orchestration framework like this was to tools in the hands of Salesforce admins and IT folks that that aren't data scientists, that aren't machine learning engineers, that need ease of use when starting to build out and refine these types of use cases. We call this context tuning inside of our framework. So here's a demonstration of taking that that new inquiry. Can y'all support orders in bulk? And this gives me a UI to verify that the outputs that we see coming through the bots, whether it be in conversation suggestion, public-facing FAQ, that our bot is staying on point, staying on brand. We do a really cool little action here called variation simulations, which is essentially asking the LLM to simulate variations of the way that I asked that question about orders in bulk. So I want to see at a quick glance in 5 different scenarios, people asking, can you support orders in bulk in different ways to ensure that we're getting consistent answers back from the LLM? And I can come in here and update these. You can learn more or place your order here. Some order form.com, for instance. Nice little inline editor. We can submit that off for our content reviewers to approve. Maybe it's a brand new knowledge article that we've identified, right? The LLM in combination with our RAG pipeline doesn't have a good answer to our orders in bulk, for instance. We want to shove that off to our content reviewers. New knowledge articles created that's now new, human validated information for our bot, right? I'm going to take you into just a little bit more of a complex scenario. We've created a new bot, gave it some basic tuning. I've actually got another one out here that I've been working on for a little while, specific for our Dream-In presentation here. This one's got quite a bit more when it comes down to how informative system instructions need to be to really reinforce these guardrails. So you start looking at the anatomy of this system instruction, you see things like specifically what I want it to do for certain response instructions. You're referencing our official documentation. You're going to tailor responses to only the scope of Baker's Delight's offerings. Even injecting the RAG pipeline context in a way that makes sense for the use case I'm building. We're going to go out and build something that's just kind of single shot, single question for our knowledge base, for instance. So I want the bot to understand that context kind of in the middle of our instruction prompt and then understand new instructions after that context is supplied. So this bot right now, let's ask it about our return policy. What is the return policy? And I know as a content curator for Baker's Delight that we don't actually have any details out there about our response policy or about our return policy specifically. And actually looking at that response, I want to tune down our instructions here with what to do whenever the inquiry is kind of speculative, right? Like we're getting a little bit more information here about the return policy than I'd like. I'd like it to kind of divert us back to the support team. So I'm going to give us some information directly in the system instruction that says, hey, when you don't have context to answer this inquiry, here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to either say, I want to talk to an agent, or you can always call us, or you can email, hi, GPT Dreamin, I'm with slalom.com, right? Give us some very natural instructions of what to do whenever that kind of context isn't found. And we're going to use that same UI we just saw to add in our return policy. So we know that context isn't available right now. So I'm going to ask it to give me a variation of what our return policy could look like. And it's hassle-free as long as it's still in the packaging. And we can see some citations out from Pinecone here, the information that's actually being used to create these responses. And we're going to go ahead and approve that one back into our bot. And we're going to clear out our bot, and we're going to see how well our bot would now handle our questions about the return policy. So in just a few seconds, we've identified a gap in our knowledge base, created a brand new knowledge article, fed that back into our vector database for truthful grounding in our RAG pipeline for responses like FAQ bots, for instance. Mike's shown you a number of demonstrations of how function-specific bots like this can be deployed across the Salesforce ecosystem. I'm going to show you just one more using that fresh context we just had. I'd like to know if y'all support bulk orders internationally. This is really going to highlight that issue that Mike has been talking about, where complex inquiries, multi-threaded inquiries, can you support bulk orders? Can you ship internationally? Knowledge bases just don't handle keyword search very well like that, right? We're trying to break apart the semantics of multi-threaded questions. Here's an example of an FAQ generated answer on an FAQ portal, taking our answers directly from that validated knowledge base, citating the articles that were used from Salesforce Knowledge right below it. A really effective way to deliver an answer right away without sending your guests through, endless FAQ pages. That's what I had, guys. That's the end of my demo. Back over to you, Mike.
Thank you, Alan. Yeah, so I think what you've seen is the ability to build and configure some bots based on, the content you have, the content you trust, and not LLM content. But we're using the features and the functions of the LLM to perform what they do best: summarization, categorization, sentiment analysis. Now, we've unlocked it into chatbots, which most people hate, but they're going to get better, promise. Historically, they've been adequate, but not great. And they've obviously improved quite a bit. And now we're starting to see the movement away from Gen AI being just used in chatbots to, like Alan showed, on search web pages. We're starting to see that used in contact center use cases. So I have an inbound question. I'm a brand new agent. I know nothing. I might take a call transcript. I might see text from an email that's the question, or SMS. Pick up that question, identify exactly where that question is in the inbound conversation, throw that question into the LLM search machine using vectors, using natural language, getting an answer that is relevant based on grounded knowledge and proven accurate information, not from the LLM, and then providing that answer back to either the customer directly through chatbot, SMS on the web page, or to the contact center agent, who can then adjust and adapt that and could read it to them. Could be through VRU. The VV capability is actually being generated as well through. Actually, let me do another screen share and I'll show you what that would look like. We have a bot, or we have a whole nother approach to, and this is not gonna fly. We'll just flow this up real quick. We have the ability to connect the output also to something called Soul Machines. Soul Machines is a talking head. And so there she is, and she can read back to you. So my point is that the ability to output the LLM content can code through multiple channels. Somebody asked in the chat, what tools are you using? This is kind of the stack that we're applying into customer service. And again, Slalom is a system integrator. So like I said before, customers come to us with multiple systems. Not everybody's 100% Salesforce shop. So in this case, we have Service Cloud, which we have to tinker with the Service Cloud screens because you're now adding, new elements to those screens. We're using Salesforce Knowledge. We're using Omnichannel and live chat. We're using case management, and this content is being written into reports and into custom objects, so you can be accessed through reports and dashboards. So understanding how many tokens are you burning, what's your LLM short-term cost, long-term cost, testing cost. We have all that written into databases for reporting. So we know what the LLM transaction, the vector database transaction cost will be. What we've done is we've added in a layer of customizations, not only to connect to different knowledge bases, different LLMs, different databases, custom analytic engines, but also then those functions of summarization for cases, and that can be pointed at any Salesforce object. We've done that in a number of different objects. Language translations, we saw the whole concept of a chatbot, as well as the bot constructor and the prompt engineering. So those are the components that enable us as a system integrator to start to work with both Salesforce content, Salesforce tools, old tools that we've had access to forever, as well as the new tools that are coming out. As soon as each new Salesforce GPT tool comes out, we have pretty quick, rapid access to that, and start to pull that in so that we can effectively deploy retrieval augmented solutions, chaining LLM bots together, using LLMs to compare answers from one LLM to another, all the different types of things that we're seeing in this new emerging space. That's about all the content that we had. We'd certainly go back and go back through more elaborate demos. There's literally the whole knowledge generation component is a whole nother kind of presentation. What we've found, for those of you who have a contact center or who have a team that manages knowledge bases, what we have learned consistently, customer to customer, is that the number one category, the number one knowledge article that answers many of the questions is none of the above. And so sadly, it's one of the things you do with new technology is you ask yourself, what can I do now that I have never been able to do before? And GPT and LLMs and natural language processing and retrieval augmented generation let you now measure the gaps in your knowledge base, which has never been able to do before because it was always other, right? So what's in that other bucket? Well, if it's 18% of your inbound calls are answered by other, that means they're not being answered, and it's going to people who have to then come up with that answer. And what we've seen in the travel industry, and we're gonna go live with an airline here pretty soon, is the ability to identify what are the questions that are being asked, a la, my cruise got canceled for a hurricane. Uh-oh, that's new. Don't have a knowledge article for that. Letting the LLM and telling the LLM to both listen for those when it's not being answered by a knowledge article, then taking the step to articulate the question that was being asked using 5 or 7 examples or 10 examples, synthesizing those, compressing them into one good knowledge article question. And then what's the answer? And so taking the transcripts, either chat transcripts, email responses, or call transcripts, and then feeding that into the LLM to generate the answer. Now you have a new question and a new answer. We did this for another travel company, and the machine generated, I think it was about 128 question answer pairs that had never been written before. After review, about 80 of them were ready to go and went into the knowledge base for future use. And so the concept of having a knowledge base that doesn't match what people are actually asking, is going to go away. And that's going to just save an enormous amount of frustration. Inbound calls will be down. Customer self-service will be up. Agents don't have to answer silly questions anymore, which they do many, many times now. And customers get answers to questions that they want answers to without, people in the way. And so I know my kids are, in their 20s, and they don't want to talk to people. They just want an answer. They want a text. They want to get an answer. And so that's the way the industry is going. We think, if you think back, I've been in the industry quite a while. If I think back to 1998, no one had a website. And 2 or 3 years later, everybody had one. And in 2009, 2010, no one had a mobile app. 2 years later, everyone did. Here we are again. Nobody has RAG and Gen AI and LLMs and natural language processing completely infused in their customer self-service environment. 2 years from now, that's going to completely change how we approach this industry of customer service, customer self-service. And then we're starting to roll it into other use cases. So we have clients talking to us and working with us on, if you're a manufacturer and you sell through partners, the partner sales channel support is very similar. We're seeing things like sales RFP use cases start to pop up. You have expensive salespeople who are answering silly questions over and over and over in RFPs, whether that gets centralized to a team, an RFP team, or that's being done through some tools. There's dozens and dozens of examples of using these types of solutions to address high volume, low complexity questions that can be answered super accurately using your knowledge, your articles, your sources of truth, not the LLM source of truth. So use the LLM for its functions and use your content for the answers, and you end up with high quality care.
And demonstrate just a dramatic evolution in the operational governance of solutions like this as well, right? Previously spending just so much time retraining NLP models and building new slots and entity detection tools to try and understand what people are talking about. Now it's as simple as sourcing the way your senior agents are answering the most complex questions and feeding that back into the pipeline of semantic search and in the way that you guardrail up your system instructions and deploy these function-specific bots. Gone are kind of the reasons to train a public-facing bot with thousands of utterances per intent, right? Let's just describe these intents in natural language and ensure that our knowledge base has the grounding to supply a truthful answer to it. And when it doesn't, ensure there's processes in place to feed the right answer. Sourcing tribal knowledge from your senior agents is one way of doing that. Sourcing context from transcripts that you have over the last 5 years, right? Running those through automation to try and find gaps in your knowledge base and using an LLM to draft the article to fill that gap is a really effective pattern at building up a very useful chatbot in a very low amount of time, right?
Yeah, we have a couple questions from Vernon. First is, are the orchestrations for these RAG actions are external to Salesforce? So there's an interesting, I'm not sure what orchestrations could mean, but let me take you through the flow. So we're using Salesforce as the call center UI. We're using the chatbot as the UI for receiving the questions. That then goes through the APIs into the LLM. The LLM input is enhanced by vector embeddings, which we're calling them context records. So those vector embeddings are stored in Salesforce, but it's a reference to an external vector database because Salesforce doesn't have a vector database. They've announced the intent to launch one with an open source tool. That's pilot, I think, or let's see, it goes press release, pilot, beta, GA. So we're in the second stage. They've press released it, and now we're going into pilot on that for vectors. So that data goes, so then you have a request from Salesforce into the LLM with vector embeddings, which then comes back and generates the answer that is synthesized from both your vector embeddings as well as your knowledge articles. So I'm not sure if you noticed one of Alan's questions in Baker's Delight. I'm not sure if you did this or not, but you can ask 2 or 3 questions in one question. So today, chatbots, if you ask 2 questions, so in the Virgin Voyages case, I want to tell me about the restaurants, tell me about the gyms, and tell me about sun tanning on deck, and tell me about can I bring my own booze on the ship? Those are 4 independent questions. A normal chatbot today would just fail on that. Now, because you have vector embeddings and you have knowledge articles, and it's all mixed into one, blob of, I can get an answer from all of those articles at the same time. You can return a question from that knowledge article in one paragraph, answering 4 questions all at once. And so that is how we're orchestrating it. And that's what those RAG actions are doing. Is it's a combination of both inside Salesforce, but also using the external tools of the LLM. In this case, what we were showing was GPT 3.5 on Azure. We're doing it with many LLMs, and then the vector database that we were showing was Pinecone, but we're also doing it with Kendra and some others. Hopefully that covers it. There's a lot of sausage in that sausage making there, but Vernon, the next question was, besides customer service, what are the top operational opportunities? It's widely used, or can be widely used. I think the characteristics we look for is high volume, low complexity is the best place for conversational AI. Summarization is not conversational AI. That is being used. We have a medical device company who's got a quality assurance process, and they store the content of that quality assurance process in a case. Many customers use cases. Cases can go on for a very long time. We have a financial services company we've worked with. We got an example of 15 pages of emails between 3 different customer support teams and 2 different subject matter experts at the customer and a third party. Summarization of that email chain as a case, or related cases, or attached documentation is another use case to take that 15 pages of junk email that everyone has to scroll through, and 2/3 of it was carbon copy and 2/3 of it was forward. And so the human can read it and say, this is irrelevant, this is duplicate, this is pertinent information. The summarization feature of an LLM compresses that and spits back 10 lines of exactly what you're looking for. So those are some really important operational places that we're seeing this being deployed in. Account summaries, executive briefings, anywhere you have to take a large amount of information, compress it and spit it back to a user, prompting them on what do you want summarized, doing the summarization, then bringing back a human in the loop response. So hopefully that helps. There was another question from Anonymous. How is this offering being priced? We're a services company, so we do projects with customers. So the solution architecture of a vector database and the LLM, customers need contracts for those providers. Obviously, you subscribe to Salesforce products through Salesforce. OpenAI callouts, et cetera, is that bundled in the subscription? So OpenAI has their own pricing, Azure has their own pricing, AWS has their own pricing, Google has their own pricing. We help people pick that. We help people set up the Gen AI strategy and use cases and roadmaps and things like that, as well as help you think through what's the cost, short-term, long-term cost, the pilot cost, and the run cost, based on some benchmarks that we've got on TCO, as well as working with your experts in AI for what tools you're going to use. So we are a services company, so we do we do professional services projects. You have to contract with Salesforce for Salesforce, Google for Google products, AWS, et cetera. We can obviously help facilitate that because we're partners with all of them.
Yeah, it's kind of an important distinction of how we go after these projects from the perspective of a simple kind of fresh implementation of new generative AI infrastructure, helping you select those products. But we also want to ensure that we're in a place where we can be flexible to work with your maturing data science teams and your machine learning teams. We've encountered everywhere across those levers to be pulled, from brand new, super immature in the AI space, all the way to tens of people inside of data science organizations in a big enterprise that want to leverage the lessons learned in the infrastructure that they've already stood up in their machine learning operations pipelines, or in forecasting and predictive NLP machine learning tools that they're already working with. That could all be very useful infrastructure to start to accelerate your implementation of a low risk, high value generative AI use case like the ones that we've demonstrated today, right?
Vernon, another one. Is this operation optional, conversational? What do your customers think about Salesforce's AI strategy versus others like Microsoft or SAP? Cannot speak to SAP. We're not an SAP customer. We've done probably 100+ integrations to SAP for Salesforce customers, B2B commerce, CPQ, exposing SAP orders, things like that. But I've not yet crossed the bridge of what SAP products are available in this space. So can't speak to SAP. Microsoft, we're a big Microsoft partner as well. We have a M365 Copilot internal pilot coming soon. I got green light this morning, Alan, that I'm a part of that, thank God. So we're testing that as well. We'll be hands on that pretty soon. We've obviously used the publicly available things, but last I checked, our info security people don't want us using business content on publicly available LLMs, so that's a no-no. So we'll be using that on our Azure instance here momentarily. We have heard that Copilot from Microsoft is read-only. It doesn't write anything. And so getting an answer but not being able to do a whole lot with that answer is to be coming soon, we've heard. Salesforce's AI strategy, I think, is spot on. It feels like they're a little late to deliver product. We've got, again, 4 stages of product release from Salesforce: press release, pilot, beta, GA. And so you have to track the 63 products they've announced through that cycle. A whole bunch just went GA in February. So we have access to some of those, not all. And then they have earnings call in, I think, next Wednesday. And so usually there's a whole bunch of news coming out of earnings calls. So we're anxious to hear what that is. We'll be at a big event next 2 Wednesdays from now in the Salesforce partner community for one of their Sales Cloud teams. And we have people on product advisory boards getting new information pretty regularly. Alan's pretty involved in testing some of their things, and we're involved with the product roadmap people. So as we get information and access to the products, then we go from there. See, there's a comment about, I forgot the vaporware phase. Well, that's Silicon Valley. But yeah, we have to wait for the products to come out and then get our hands on them. And then, customers obviously evaluate. I think the biggest red flag right now in the Salesforce space is when asked for what's the LLM transaction pricing, that's not available yet. And so I'm not going to buy K-cups if I don't know if I get 5 free K-cups, and then someone tells me, I don't know what the cost of your coffee habit is going to be down the road. I'm a little skeptical. I'm going to go sign up for 5 K-cups, not knowing that they're going to cost me $0.05 a piece or $10 a piece. We don't have that. They haven't published that LLM pricing volume pricing for the transactions and token costs. So that's a big, we keep our eye very closely on that news, because that'll, I think, open it up for people want to know what it's going to cost. If I can shave 20% of my customer service calls, that's huge, but at what cost? People want to know what the cost is. But again, what we've seen so far is in the structure we've put together, the cost, the run cost isn't very high, because we're not burning up tons and tons of tokens. You don't need 1 million input on your context window. You need, 30, 50 word questions and 30, 50 word answers. So it's very cost effective right now. Mark, I see you're back online. How are you?
I am back. Thank you both so much for coming on and sharing these really forward-thinking demonstrations and answering these questions in detail. Really great engagement from everyone. You guys had a lot of great positive comments in the chat. So just so you know, I think I can speak for everyone when I say thank you for coming on and sharing with this AI focus group.